tonight we celebrate an internationally renowned scholar from the college faculty. And of course, that is Dr. Alan R. Sandstrom. He is the professor of anthropology and the chair of the IPFW Department of Anthropology. His advanced degrees are from IU Bloomington. He's conducted extensive ethnographic field research among exiled Tibetans in India and the Nahua peoples of northern Veracruz, Mexico. He is the author of numerous articles and book chapters and 2 major books on the Nahua. He's the editor of the Nahua newsletter, the journal of research on these peoples. He's recently completed 3 edited volumes on the anthropology of Mesoamerica, native peoples of the Gulf Coast of Mexico, Mesoamerican healers, and holy saints and fiery preachers, the anthropology of Protestantism in Mexico and Central America. In 1999, he was selected for the Visiting Distinguished Professor Program by the Mexican Center for Research and Advanced Study in Social Anthropology. In 2003, he was elected to the Mexican Academy of Anthropological Sciences. Closer to home, in 2001, he won the IPFW Outstanding Research Award. He is recently back from a sabbatical spent doing field work on the Nahua in northern Veracruz. So I would like to now present to you Dr. Alan Sandstrom.
Thank you, David. Oh, these are your notes here. I was just about to read them. I'm going to read this. I've written it especially to be read, but it's coordinated with a PowerPoint show that Pamela put together, and please forgive me if I get off whack a little bit here, but I'm going to try to keep it up. Anyway, I want to thank you all for coming this evening. I know it's a busy time of the year. There are about 6,000 cultures in the world today, and every one of them in the ethnographic record has some kind of religious system. Can everybody hear me? Okay. Countless numbers of cultures existed in prehistory, where over 99% of the human past was spent, and we can safely assume that each one of those also had religion. Individuals may or may not be religious, but cultures always are. Religion, then, must contribute something very important to our survival as a species. If there were groups without religion, they are no longer with us. Tonight, I would like to focus on a single religious system that Pamela and I have been studying and trying to understand for more than 3 decades. It is practiced by a Native American group in Mexico, descendants of the Aztecs, who provided over the largest empire in the New World before the arrival of the Spaniards in 1519. These are the Nahua people, and they call their religion Tlaneltoquili, meaning belief, devotion, or worship. The purpose of the anthropological study of culture is to document human groups and develop explanations for similarities and differences among them. For example, why are Anglo-North American and Eskimo kinship systems identical? These are 2 vastly different societies. Why do Iroquois people trace their descent through the female line? Anthropologists are interested in how and why cultures evolve, that is, transform from one system into another. In addition to cultural anthropology, which is my subdiscipline, the other 3 branches of anthropology are archaeology, linguistics, and bioanthropology. All 4 subfields triangulate on the phenomenon of culture in different ways, and I am glad to report that IPFW offers a 4-field education for its anthropology majors. As a department, we are committed to the broadest possible coverage of the discipline. Not everybody agrees with this goal. Anthropology was hit in the mid-1980s by a virulent postmodern attack that rejected science, and particularly social science, and all generalized knowledge as examples of Euro-American colonial imposition on the world's peoples. Finally, we seem to be reaching the end of this nihilist attack, helped by a book called Reclaiming a Scientific Anthropology, written by our own Larry Kusnar. There are many problems in understanding causation in human social life. People in any society tend to think that things just happen, that their religion is universal, correct, and eternal. But in my view, and in the view of scientific anthropology, social and cultural phenomena are caused. There are reasons why things are the way they are, but the members of a culture are rarely aware of them. Anglos and Eskimos have the same kinship system because it adapts them to a highly mobile lifestyle. Iroquois matrilineal kinship system is caused by males being absent for long periods of time during the year. The question is, what is it that causes religions to be the way they are? The study of religion is undergoing a revolution right now based on a Darwinian view that is compatible with our own work. However, that is the subject of another talk. I want to speak this evening about an older research strategy, cultural ecology, that has been around since the 19th century. I think it holds the greatest promise to identify the causes of religious belief and practice. Cultural ecology is based on a materialist perspective that is analogous to field biology studies. The idea is that culture can be looked at as a strategy for survival. Culture adapts populations to given requirements for making a living in a given environment with a given level of technology. The material conditions of life lead people to develop social and cultural institutions and traditions, such as kinship and religious systems, that are consonant with the material, pragmatic requirements of their lives. The inspiration for this theoretical perspective is Karl Marx, but chapter and verse Marxists would reject cultural ecology as mechanical materialism or vulgar materialism, because it denies the dialectical nature of human social dynamics. Despite these criticisms, I think cultural ecology is the correct approach. There is great variability in the cultures of the world, but the variation is not infinite. Historically unrelated groups with similar modes of production have statistically similar social organizations and similar ideological systems. For example, there is variation in the religious system of hunting and gathering peoples, but there are remarkable similarities as well. What we would like to know is how these similarities come about. In my view, the biggest scientific problem in the social sciences today is understanding the connection between the material conditions of life and the socially shared beliefs, worldview, religious symbols, value and meaning systems, aesthetic standards, and all of the ideological phenomena that are part of every culture of the world. Using standard cultural ecological terminology, we can ask, what is the relationship between the infrastructure and the superstructure of a culture? The infrastructure is the interface between human beings and nature and includes technology, work patterns, environmental factors, modes of production, modes of reproduction, and political economy. The superstructure is composed of myths, symbols, philosophy, music, art, ideology, and religion. The question is, how does the infrastructure cause the superstructure? Another way to phrase the problem is that since people are capable of an infinite number of ideas, why do some of them become social? We think that ideas can only become social if they are compatible with the infrastructure. Cultural ecological theory asserts that religious traditions must make sense in the context of people's lives that are conditioned by the way they make a living. Understanding how this works is a long-term problem in the social sciences, tracing to the 19th century. That, if solved, promises to bring a whole new understanding of our society as well as all others. Cultural ecology was a hot topic when I was in graduate school. My idea was to study intensely a single case in order to uncover some of the mechanisms of infrastructural causation, and then move to a cross-cultural comparison of similar societies from around the world and get a resolution. In retrospect, the pretentiousness of this graduate student project is staggering. I chose the contemporary Aztecs, or the Nahua, because I wanted to contribute information to the ethnographic record on a famous but remarkably little-known group. Up until our work, there was no long-term study of Nahua village life, even though small villages are where the overwhelming majority of people spend their lives and have lived in the past. Two additional advantages to studying the Nahua are that we have good ethnohistorical information on the group from the Spanish colonial system, and I could get language training during graduate studies at Indiana University. Now for some background on the Nahua. The language they speak is called Nahuatl, and it's spoken by about 2 million people today. It's a polysynthetic language related to Ute, Paiute, Comanche, and Shoshone, languages that are spoken in the American Southwest. Although it is off the topic, I can't resist showing you something of how the language works. Here's the first of 2 Nahuatl words we recently collected in the field. Tepots meka ishtlatil tlaquiloli. And let me break that down for you. Tepots is metal. Meka is vine. So metal vines are wires, right? Ish is your face. Tlatil is the verb stem for to deliver. Tla is the direct object, like it. And quiloli means to paint. And the word paint is what they use for writing, because they used to paint in books pre-Hispanically. So this word means it's the apparatus that delivers words to your face over wires. It's email. I'll give you one more. Tepots teska tlamamulin kakupin kayot. Tepots, you know, right? It's metal. Teska means mirror. Tla is the direct object. Momolin, mo is the reflexive. So olin means movement, so it moves itself. Ka is a part of speech that you can't translate. Kopin means drawing or image. Coyote means it's a noun. So this is the apparatus where the images move themselves on the mirror, and it's their word for television. And there they are putting up the first television antenna in this village we've been living in. Nawa territory lies in Mesoamerica and extends into Central America. Our group is located in the tropical forests of northern Veracruz on the Gulf Coast of Mexico. The Nawa practice slash and burn horticulture, which is different from the type of agriculture we practice. Their food production is a type of gardening, and it is combined with gathering, fishing, and hunting. In slash and burn horticulture, the forest is first cut with a machete, then it is dried, burned, and finally the ash-laden soil is planted, and all of this work is done by hand. The yield is extremely high, but after a few years the soil becomes depleted and a new section of forest must be cut, and the process is started all over again. Each household head is part of a network of kinsmen and friends who help each other with the onerous tasks associated with this type of farming. The field or milpa contains dozens of useful plants and herbs, some of which are only semi-domesticated. The staple of the Nawa diet is corn. Corn is also the center of their religious conceptions, as you will see shortly. Corn means sustenance to them, and the grain is evidence of a cosmos that provides the means of life and happiness. Another important ecological factor in any human group is the other people who live in the region. For the Nawa, this includes other Native American groups and the dominant Hispanic elites. So an important part of my study has been to look at interethnic relations in this region of Mexico. A key social structural principle related to ecological adaptation involves Nawa kinship, and I found that it too was poorly understood by researchers, so I had to develop a new model of Nawa kinship. During the first field trip, I spent 16 months living in a single community and soon realized that the task I had set for myself was unbelievably complex. The word quixotic comes to mind. The religious system proved to be very difficult to understand. It's an extremely abstract and ancient tradition that was also poorly understood by researchers. The religion involves complex rituals with layers of symbolic meaning, an extensive myth system reaching back into prehistory, and many other complications. To move forward with a larger project, we would have to rework completely some generally held understandings of the indigenous religious systems in Mesoamerica. For a while, we gave up, and Pamela and I, with the support of IPFW, went to Asia for nearly a year and opened a new research front among the Tibetans in exile in the Himalaya region of northwest India. All the while, however, the Nawa puzzle haunted us. In the end, the seemingly irrational move to a new field area proved a key experience that helped to clarify Nawa religion, as I will explain shortly. I will not be able to describe the complexities or solve the problem of infrastructural causation in the next few minutes. However, I am still working on it, and in the intervening years, we have been publishing our ethnographic findings among the Nawa. But I can tell you something of what we have learned about Nawa religion and how their religion places these people in relation to what we call the forces of nature and in relation to their own means of horticultural production. There are many ritual occasions, and I will focus on the highest, most complex form of Nawa religious practice, namely pilgrimages to sacred water mountains. We participated in our first pilgrimage in 1998, 28 years after beginning field research in this village. Ethnography takes a lot of patience. I want to limit my comments to 3 major points and illustrate them with a set of images taken in the field last year when Pamela and I were on sabbatical. The first point is that for the Nawa, the landscape has been thoroughly incorporated into their religious system. To some extent, every group brings aspects of the landscape into their religious beliefs and myths, and anthropologists call such systems of sacred geography the cognized environment. Hunting and gathering groups often have particularly elaborate cognized environments. The Nawa represent an extreme in this regard, and every hill, plain, spring, stream, boulder, or other geographical feature is named by them and plays a role in their myths and rituals. When walking along, people comment on each feature as they pass and name the spots that play a role in myths. They often name their houses by some nearby geographical feature, for example, Atlalco, which means muddy place, and then they take that as their own name. This toponymic system illustrates the close association the Nawa have with their local environment and reveals the role that the landscape plays in their consciousness, identity, and daily life. For the Nawa, the place of the landscape in their religious conceptions is illustrated by their ideas about water mountains. They say that mountains are the sources of all that is good and positive in the world. Mountains are literally filled with life-giving water. The belief is that thunder spirits carry water in the form of clouds from the Gulf of Mexico, where it is stored inside of mountains. The water spirit then distributes the water to the fields from moist caves near the mountain summits. These caves are particularly sacred and are believed to be not only the source of rain, but the home of seeds, fertility, treasure, and other valued items. I find it interesting that these seemingly mythological beliefs are rooted in empirical observations. In fact, evaporated water from the Gulf of Mexico moves inland and is lofted over the mountains to the west. Visible clouds form at the ridgetops and provide the source of rain. In this map, I documented the sacred hills or water mountains that the Nahua recognize in their region. At the center, marked by one of the arrows, is the village labeled Amatlan. I don't know if you can read that. And our destination tonight is a pilgrimage to the sacred hill Palashtepetl. To the north is the most important water mountain, Postectli, the governor, here seen as the backdrop to our slides. The second point I want to make concerns the pantheistic nature of Nahua religion. Ethnohistorians and ethnographers have had a difficult time characterizing indigenous Mesoamerican religions. The pantheons among the different groups seem unstable, the deities blend into one another or contradict each other, and the gods are indistinct and undergo frequent transformations. This confusion is reflected in the various labels that researchers use to describe Mesoamerican religions. They call some religions animistic, the belief that everything has a soul, or animatistic, the belief in mana or an impersonal force, or polytheistic, the belief in a pantheon of discrete deities usually arranged in a hierarchy. The fact is, none of these formulations fit the data very well. One difficulty with our project, then, was that we did not know how to characterize Nahua religion. At this point, we basically put the Mesoamerican research on a back burner and turned to ethnographic investigations among the Tibetans in India. It was there that we learned about another way to look at the Mesoamerican data. Tibetan Buddhism and Hinduism are basically pantheistic, and that proved to be a key breakthrough in our research among the Nahua. It was in India that we first saw pantheism in action. We later found out that this solution to the problem of defining religion in Mesoamerica was hinted at in an obscure article published in 1910 by a German researcher, Hermann Bayer. The idea was later elaborated by anthropologist Eva Hunt in an insightful book called The Transformation of the Hummingbird. We have been publishing on the pantheistic nature of Nahua religion for several years now, and the idea is becoming accepted among Mesoamericanists. So what is pantheism? It is a profound philosophical religious system that differs radically from theistic religions like Christianity. In pantheism, the cosmos itself is the deity. The creator and the creation are one and the same. In Christianity, the creator and the creation are separate, and pantheism is considered a heresy. The cosmos in pantheism is a seamless, indivisible totality, and everybody and everything partakes of deity. All diversity is an illusion, the product of our sense organs and the way our brains work. There is thus no distinction between animate and inanimate. Everything is suffused with deity, even objects. Pantheism helps explain the sacred landscape for the Nahua. For them, it is literally alive, part of a living universe, and everything is permeated with the sacred principle. The name for this sacred principle in Nahuatl is Totiotzi, our sacred deity, that means, a word based on the root teot, translated by 16th century Spaniards as God. But the friars were unaware that it was a radically different concept of God from their own. For the Nahua, the great animator of the universe, the entity that breathes life into the cosmos, is the sun. The sun is called Tonati in Nahuatl, and the people believe that it provides a divine heat and the power of life to every object and living entity. Not surprisingly, the Nahua have incorporated elements of Spanish Catholicism into their religion. Their name in Spanish for the sun is Jesus, or Jesus. Within each of us, there is a soul called the Tonali soul. The word is formed from the root meaning heat that derives from the sun. In Nahua belief, the sun transfers its energy to the corn plant. We obtain divine heat from eating corn. Corn travels to the body in our blood, and it is this sun-corn blood cycle that makes us alive. They have a saying, Simple neto eso, corn is our blood. It is worth pointing out that the Nahua view of how we stay alive accords very well with our scientific understanding. Linked to the pantheistic nature of Nahua religion is their practice of cutting paper images of spirits from paper. Pamela and I wrote the book on this craft. Paper cutting is an ancient pre-Hispanic practice that only survives in this particular region of Mexico. Traditionally, the paper was handmade, but now it is mostly purchased in markets. It is cut by the ritual specialist for ceremonial occasions, and the images basically represent spirit entities. We decided to make a collection of as many sacred paper cuttings as possible, and soon found that there are an infinite variety of images. The spirits represented are named. They are cut with iconography that identifies them, and most of them are destroyed following the ritual. One problem with pantheistic systems is that they tend to be very abstract and far removed from daily life and concerns. Ritual specialists portray spirits relevant to the specific ritual to make the system seem less abstract and more immediate for participants. For example, they cut images of disease-causing wind spirits when they are curing a patient. When dedicating an offering to ensure fertility of the fields, they cut images of seed spirits, the earth and water spirits. For some of them, like these, are dressed in tiny cloth costumes and adorned with jewelry. The fact is that each one of these spirits represents the single unity of Totiotsi. There aren't any separate spirits. That's an illusion. The Nawa concept of water and its multiple states provides an excellent example of pantheistic thinking. I have just written an article for UNESCO that explains the transformations of water in Nawa thought. Natural phenomena such as dew, hail, clouds, fog, thunder, and lightning are all understood as aspects of a single substance of water, and they are all visualized as you see here in the medium of cut paper. Apparent diversity masks underlying unity. The Buddhists and Hindus do essentially the same thing, with all of their thousands and even millions of portrayals of spirit entities. All of the different spirits portrayed in statues, paintings, and butter sculptures are seen as manifestations of a single sacred principle. For Hindus, it is Brahma. For the Buddhists, it is Buddha. And for the Nawa, the sacred principle is Totiotsi. It is noteworthy that images are cut of animate beings and inanimate objects. In destroying the paper figures following a ritual, the spirits are returned to the great unity from which the ritual specialist temporarily extracted them. My third focus tonight is on Nawa specialists of the sacred. Nawa rituals are organized by ritual specialists who study under a master and learn the complex skills required to cure disease and effectively deal with numerous spirit entities. In the literature, many researchers call them shamans because their power comes from dreams or other direct contact with spirits. However, they also act as priests in managing community-wide rituals. For this reason, I prefer to call these singular people shaman-priests. The Nahuatl word for shaman-priest is tlamatket, meaning person of knowledge. They can be male or female, and they are often called to their profession by a miraculous cure or vivid dreams. On the negative side, once called, they have no choice but to follow a career as a shaman priest. To reject the call is to invite reprisals from powerful spirits. Like a true shaman of the Trans-Siberian type, the Nawa Tlamatket does occasionally come into direct contact with spirits. I would like to show you some rare footage of a female ritual specialist named Sophia in a trance-like state communicating directly with Apanchani, the water spirit. In this brief video clip, you will also see another Nawa shaman priest named Cirilo, who is leading the offering to the top of the sacred water mountain. After hearing the message conveyed by Sophia from the water spirit, you will see him weeping openly before offerings laid out on a pre-Hispanic platform mound. He is imploring the cosmos to provide fertility to their gardens and milpas. Here it is. central feature of Nawa rituals is called tlamanilisli, and a word that means simply offering. So rituals are a kind of social exchange with spirit entities. Rituals overseen by a Nawa shaman priest vary in complexity depending on what the people are seeking. In the Nawa view, spirit entities closely identified with the processes of nature provide what people need for their lives and prosperity. The rituals are essentially offerings dedicated to spirit representatives of these processes in order to obligate them so that they continue to provide abundant harvest, rain, sun, health, and children. In Nawa belief, human beings and spirits are caught up in an elaborate and delicate cycle of exchanges. Now I would like to take you to the heart of a Nawa ritual, a pilgrimage that we participated in exactly 1 year ago. It is one of the 3 that Pamela and I went on last spring. I will show you some slides of the proceedings that I hope clearly illustrate the points I have just made about the sacred landscape, the pantheistic nature of Nawa religion, and the role of the shaman priest. Nawa rituals take an enormous amount of preparation, and here we have men sitting around making floral adornments, and they've come from distant villages. Here we have specialized adornments. This particular pinwheel thing is called sitlali, and it means star, and I'll show you how they use this in just a minute. Inside the shrine, the shaman priests are folding paper, and you know something big is about to happen, because when the paper comes out, that means it's important. Here they sit around 3, 4, 5 days and nights with no sleep, and they cut, for this particular ritual, 7,000 paper images. Here's one shaman priest unfolding one. You can see the rake-like headdress. This is the open jaws of the earth, and the little triangles on his chest are the sacred water mountains. So it's a spirit of the earth. This is Cirilo, who's the head shaman priest. He's also a master paper cutter, and he's contributing all of his labor to this effort. This is the Xochicalli. Xochicalli means flower house, actually, and it's a shrine. And they've begun to set up the altar at the end of it, you can see, and the shaman priests are at the right cutting paper. These women are tying little paper bones, like a skeleton, onto these large paper figures that stand for the Earth Mother, the Earth Father, and seed spirits, and the water spirit. And previously they've made little cloth outfits or little cloth dresses, and they are dressing them. And they do this with great reverence and assurity. Here she's putting a purple dress on a spirit of the what we would call Indian corn, or the purple corn. This is an altar they're fixing outside of the main shrine, and it's dedicated to Tonati, the sun. Notice how they've connected the outer altar with the inner altar with a vine and marigold string, and they call this a telegraph line, and it keeps the sun and the inner altar connected. This is the altar under construction. You can see what they do with the stars. They put them on the arch over the altar. The altar is actually a model of the cosmos, and the arch is Ilbikakli, the sky. The marigolds are in the bottom left, and those are sacred, and they were domesticated by the Aztecs. Most people don't know that, and that's where we get them. This is kind of a close-up of a star. These are also men making special wands. One is called 7-flower, the other is called 5-flower, and these are the male and female aspect of corn, and they will be used during the ritual. The musician's taking a break. Everything has guitar and violin music. And once in a while, they take a break and tune their instruments, morning, noon, and night, for 5, 6, 7, 8 days without rest. These people are making sacred corn bundles, and these play a very important part. They represent the fertility of the corn, which is, of course, what life is based on. Notice how they decorate them with marigolds, a sacred marigold, beeswax candles, and they wrap them in bandanas, brand new bandanas they buy. These are very, very sacred items to them. Back in the shrine in the flower house in the upper left, you can see the shaman priest, and he's stacking the paper dolls. These are neatly counted. They're put on special cut paper beds, and you can see the altar is being slowly decorated. The one on the right, the large picture on the right, there's a folded palm mat there, and that is filled with paper dolls that will be taken on the pilgrimage itself. This is the altar before the offering is dedicated, and notice the 2 sheets of paper there. These are called windows. And they're hung up before the altar, and the spirits can look through those windows and see the offering and receive the offerings through them. All during this time, women are dancing. You can see they've got the dressed paper figures on the right representing the seed spirits. The powerful shaman priest on the left has ringing a bell to wake the spirits up to make sure they're getting this, they're receiving all this. And she carries in her left hand a walking stick, which is carried by the thunder spirits. It's a very powerful ritual symbol. Here we have more paper dolls in the front there dressed. In the back, a woman carrying water on her head. The woman in the center there, you can see, has a paper figure dressed in a green dress sitting in a pot. and that's Apanchani, the water spirit. That's responsible for fertility of the fields. The two men on the right, you can see, are carrying sacred walking sticks decorated with ribbons, which stand for the colorful light of the sun and when it comes up in the morning. Things are just about to happen here. People start jamming in. Outside, in the meantime, the sacred corn bundles are completed, and the woman is sacralizing them with copal incense. Now, before you actually make an offering, you've got to make sure that the nasty spirits, the dangerous ones, the polluting spirits are taken care of. So they set up this beautiful array. You'll notice that if you look at the white ones in the front there, they've got rib holes in them. These are spirits from Mictlan, the underworld, and they are polluting, and they will horn in and get all your offerings. So you make them a separate set of offerings. And there they've got the offerings laid right on top of them as they're organizing this thing. And the shaman priests all sit around and chant their own chants. So it's this low rumble. It's extremely powerful and emotional as they're imploring these spirits to accept these offerings and to keep away from the main offering in the shrine. Once again, the dressed paper figures are brought out in case there's any lingering wind spirits. They want to get rid of them and get them away from the seed spirits. Then the offerings get poured directly on the paper figures themselves. We have Pepsi Cola. I mean, this is fancy stuff to them. They don't have a lot of money. All the participants are also cleansed from lingering wind spirits, and they're passed through a marigold and vine loop, you can see on the right. And then before we actually go into the shrine, you pass underneath a stinging nettle plant, and that gets rid of the final, last clinging wind spirits off your body. Here we're waiting for the wind spirits to finish their offerings so that they will not be tempted by the offerings that are about to occur. These shaman priests are very powerful, and they're surrounded themselves with these dangerous spirits. There's got to be extra cleansings of them, and so they use sacred herbs to get the final remnants of these polluting wind spirits away. This is, in Spanish, it's called the entregada, which means the delivery, and it's a shrine filled with people with these palm and marigold adornments, and they're swaying back and forth almost like a milpa, like corn in a field. These are the sacrificial victims. They are turkeys and chickens. And they parade them around with great respect. They parade them in front of the altar, and they enter into mock combat with them until they make them squawk. They then cut their throats, and they put the blood on each paper figure. Blood contains chikawilisli. Chikawilisli is the force of life. It's the power of life. And so you're conveying that power of life to each one of these symbolic paper figures. Every paper figure's got to get some blood, and so they dip a feather in blood, and they make sure that it gets daubed on every single one of them. Then they just decorate the altar right over the top of them. And there it looks like on the left. You can see it. If you look on the ground beneath the altar, you'll notice the pot again with that green-dressed paper figure. In the center, it's a close-up. That's Apanchani. That's the water spirit. She's the one who brings the rain. She's responsible for fertility. She also drowns husbands that are nasty to their wives. She tangles their feet in her hair as she pulls them under and drowns them. She's a protector of women. Notice the window on the right's been daubed with blood, the paper. This is pretty clear symbolism here, don't you think? You got the water pot there, and there you got coil palms leading directly to the image of the water spirit. This is the next morning. We've been up for 3 or 4 days now with no sleep, and they're loading up their chiquiwit, which are carrying baskets, and we're about to go on the pilgrimage. The woman on the right is censing everybody with copal incense, sacralizing everybody. Here we're on the actual pilgrimage, and the 4 people in the front are the most powerful shaman priests of all. First thing we do, and we put all these slides together to show you the kind of cacophony that a Navajo ritual is. There's about 15 different things going on at once. They've stopped at the spring. It's a part of the sacred landscape that supplies water to the village, and they'll set up an altar. You can see them chanting. They put up the image of the water spirit in front of the altar to bring the blessings of rain onto the village and into their fields. Here we go. We're walking. Finally make it to the top here, and they immediately unload their carrying baskets, and they are going to set up an altar. These are the 2 powerful shaman priests. You notice they've got stacks of paper figures with beeswax candles, and they put palm and marigold adornments, chanting heartfelt chants, imploring the spirits to bring the blessings of life and fertility onto their fields. Here they're very carefully laying out the paper figures. It's done with great respect, very slowly. Notice there's on top of the altars, several thousand of them, and on the bottom, underneath, on the ground, Notice all the scraps of paper that were used in cutting the paper is brought up there very carefully because these scraps contain some of the power, and they put that under there as part of the offering. Here are the women very carefully rearranging them. More sacrifice. And what they do before they actually sacrifice the birds is they feed them, usually cane alcohol, and this is the ultimate demonstration of respect before they kill them. They eat them, by the way. They don't waste them. There's the blood. This is something we saw for the first time in this ritual, and this is amazing. He's got a feather dipped in blood, and he's signing his name. And this is mimicking the ancient practice of the political people signing official documents, which basically dispossessed the Indians and everything else. But the power of actually signing a document like that is reproduced in this ritual. Decorated again, right over the blood-soaked paper. This is the Lord and Lady of the Earth. And notice the beautiful embroidery that they have on their cloth outfits. Chanting again in front. Notice the women on the right. What they're doing is making paper skeletons, and they're tying these skeletons onto corn spirit seeds, and those will be taken home by some of the participants. See the little skeleton? This chicken is about to be sacrificed. It is to Mishli the cloud, and it's buried after it's sacrificed, and the earth and the sacred water mountain to make sure that the clouds come to the fields. This is the final altar, and it's on a pole, and it's decorated, you can see, with marigolds. And if you look on the left-hand side there, you see this circular platform, kind of lattice-looking thing, and they're tying offerings on it on the other two slides. And they're going to erect this pole. You can see that. And there's paper streamers coming out. Paper's critical to them. This is an altar to Tanati, the sun, and those are the rays of the sun coming from the sun when it comes up over the horizon in the morning. They're also circumambulating to increase religious merit, which is, interestingly enough, is what the Buddhists do as well. This is an old paper figure with a dress that's been weathered, and it's been out for months and months and months, and it stands for the Earth Mother, the old grandmother. And she's in a little tiny chair, and they always leave a little offering for her, too, even though she's kind of falling apart. So what can we say by way of conclusion about Nahua religion? Nahua religion clearly does address daily pragmatic concerns of the horticultural way of life. It concerns crop fertility, health, and keeps humans in balance with the forces of nature. The religion practiced by the Nahua situates people in their natural and social environment, explains natural occurrences, and allows people to participate in processes of the world while not strictly controlling them. It helps people conceive of complex processes such as plant reproduction and human disease, portray them in symbolic form, and enter into reverential exchange with them. It permits people to participate in a world created and conditioned by the way they make their living. Religion provides that important conception that people are part of the natural world, part of a complex system of exchange with natural forces. In pantheism, human beings are identical to nature. They do not stand apart. Nahua religious ideas show how everything is interrelated. The Nahua say that people are corn. In chanting and poetry, they call people tlalchamantli, which means earthly sprout. Human beings are corn in a different form, a transformation of the corn plant. Our bodies are modeled on corn. The tassel is our head, the stalk is our body, and the roots are our feet. The Nahua conceive of the ripe corn ready for harvest as ilamat, the sacred old lady who holds in her arms the precious baby swaddled in leaves. For the Nahua, the sun lives in us as a heat soul. Our blood is like the water that surrounds us, and our flesh is like the earth that sustains us. As human beings, we are intimately linked to the local landscape. In us are the forces of the cosmos that make everything alive. All of these conceptions and many more are encoded in Nahua religion. People's religious ideas are not random, and they cannot be reduced to historical accident. In the end, the problem of connecting infrastructure with superstructure must be approached by ethnological comparison of cross-cultural cases. We must compare historically unrelated horticultural societies. For us, the work has just begun on the project because it has taken us so long to come to a fuller understanding of the Nahua system. However, comparisons are useless unless they are based on the highest quality, detailed ethnographic data on groups such as the Nahua. Individual studies such as we have been engaged in are critical to the endeavor. We have conclusive evidence that infrastructural changes cause superstructural adjustments. Our own infrastructure has been undergoing a radical change over the past 50 years or so, and thus we should expect the religious superstructure to respond. Our productive system is transforming from a manufacturing to an information and service economy. Processes of globalization of economic and political forces are accelerating alarmingly. If cultural ecological theory is correct, we should look for new religions to be born and for established ones to begin reflecting these profound transformations. There are many examples of these changes that are occurring. The governor of Georgia, Sonny Perdue, following in the footsteps of the Nawa, recently held a public prayer meeting to beseech God for rain. This would have been unthinkable even a few years ago. Today is Earth Day, a North American observance that began in the 1970s and is already taking on religious overtones. The whole concept of Gaia could easily be turning into a new religion. The What Would Jesus Do is an initiative that links mainstream religion with the ecological movement. And how about the Southern Baptist Convention, once a staunch opponent of the idea of global warming, just announcing that it now acknowledges climate change to be a reality that must be addressed. Increasingly, you can expect to see the appearance of small breakaway sects, such as the recent nativistic movements within Mormonism, so much in the news these days. The Nawa, too, are swept up in these changes, and not surprisingly, new religious forms are emerging. A few years ago in a neighboring village, a young Nawa woman named Amalia Bautista was the focus of a revitalization movement in which she was declared the living manifestation of Seven Flower, the corn spirit. She has been silenced and quietly sequestered into a convent by the Catholic Church. On a more conventional scale, the mass conversion of Native Americans throughout Latin America to various sects of Protestantism can be interpreted as superstructural adjustment to the forces of globalization. The title of my talk tonight, Anthropology Gets Religion, has a double meaning. One meaning is that we will get what religion is all about through painstaking cross-cultural studies when we extract ourselves from our own largely unconscious cultural systems. And the second meaning is that anthropology is getting religion by returning to its roots as a field. The field is shaking off nihilistic aspects of postmodernism and moving ahead with empirical studies that address scientific problems. We are finding our way back to our original calling. No patlanque, the end, or in Nahuatl, here it is finished. Thank you very much for your attention. Sorry, I just stacked all that stuff up on your things.
You got my notes someplace.
Here's your notes right
Yeah. Are there any questions anybody has? Alan would be happy to answer them. Yes, sir.
Congratulations for the conference.
Thank you.
There's a couple of things I wanted to ask you. Like this type of shamanism looks to me very different from that practice in the Amazon.
Yes.
Where the shaman takes kinds of games.
Right.
Even more over individually sick people.
Well, it's actually one of the reasons that calling these people shamans is slightly misleading, I think. They do actually take hallucinogens once in a while. They take marijuana, but they don't smoke it. They drink. They mix it with aguardiente, cane alcohol, and they do enter the other world, and no question about it. But there is individual healing. But don't forget, these people were part of one of the largest states in the New World at one point. They were rural parts, but the people in the Amazon never really were like that, and so their shamanism is going to be more of a Siberian-type shamanism. That's a very good observation. That's absolutely true.
The second thing is that I wanted your opinion on this observation, and that is that the modern populist politician can be as a shaman and they do marginalized because they seem to play this kind of magical role.
I think you could make that case, but I wouldn't call them shamans in that case. Shaman is an evenk word that means somebody who jumps around and dances around. The evenk are a Trans-Siberian group, hunting and gathering group in northern Russia and Siberia. And it's a real specific, where spirits actually enter you and you act as a medium. You channel these spirits actually and enter into direct contact with them. And I've never seen any politicians in the U.S. that are that interesting. Yeah. They certainly try to identify themselves that way, don't they? Yeah. Sure.
It is interesting to know that where there was strong shamanism, you find the strongest cases of populism.
Well, that's a very interesting observation.
Russia, Siberia, and Latin America.
That's a very interesting observation. That would be a cultural continuity, wouldn't it?
Okay, thank you.
Yes, please.
You did mention something, worshiping the female aspect of corn.
Yeah.
Do they split things like that?
Yes.
Like in Hinduism?
Yes, they do. There's a male and a female aspect of everything.
I also know that Hinduism was kind of founded by nomadic Aryans.
Yeah.
We're talking about the wandering people. So that's kind of something they have in common too.
Well, another thing is Tibetan Buddhists are highly influenced by Trans-Siberian shamanism as well. So these are actually directly influenced by shamanic traditions. That's right. And the Native American traditions, all the way from the Arctic to the tip of South America, are filled with shamanic traditions. That's right. That's a very good observation. If anybody's interested, I brought some samples here for you. If you'd like to take a quick look, I'll just hold them up real briefly. This is a sacred shaman box here, and it was actually made by our son, so it's not authentic in that sense. This, by the way, is Tokyotsu. This is the sacred deity, and you'll notice this is a kind of a male female there. Michelle Duffmore. But this is fun. This is cool. It's not done by a real skillful putter, but it represents the flowers, the plants that keep us alive. This is made out of homemade paper, by the way. You're welcome to come up and look at this. I also have some sheets of the paper that they make to cut the dolls out of if you're interested. This is made out of the inner bark of the fig tree. You're welcome to take a look at this. And we have some actual treasures here. Go ahead and hold them up. This is the male aspect of the earth in his white costume, and this is the female aspect of the earth. You see? You're welcome to come up and look at these closer if you'd like. It took 38 years of field work to get some of these. I want everybody to appreciate that. Yes?
How did you get this?
We participate in the ritual so much that we're actually given responsibilities for things, and they said if you're interested in this and you really care about this, then you've got to have a box on your altar in the house, and you've got to have some of these things. So they gave them to me. This is.
You have to look underneath.
Look underneath.
So they got beautiful cuttings, and they're all emblematic of their identities. The little earrings and jewels.
This is the typical way they're stored in bundles like that. You can see the little skeletons on there too. You see them? And one of the things we discovered this time is they're always bundled up like this. And if you look what's in there, there's different kinds of corn, and there's beans, and there's different crops. They're all tied together. So what these are, they're not individual crops, but they're like a movement. They're like suppers or something. Yes?
Tied the signing of the altar at one point to European paper. Is that where this use of paper comes from, or is that separate?
That's a great question. This is pre-Hispanic, this paper use. This is the only part in Mexico where it survives. Nobody knew it was there. We had some reports in the turn of the 20th century, and Pamela and I went in there, and my God, this whole thing was there. It's still very much alive. But this traces directly to the pre-Hispanic. The paper that you're seeing right here is actually purchased in the market because they said making the paper is too much work. And so they buy the paper, and it's got colors. They love the colors as well. But this tradition traces directly back to the pre-European. No question about it. The evidence is incontrovertible.
Of similar.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you very much.
There's another question back there.
How much difficulty did you have being accepted to go to the rituals?
Well, I told you it was 28 years before we got to go on the main show. And we've known these people. I've known them since they were children, a lot of them. You have to be able to communicate with them, and you have to be there for long periods of time. I think Pam and I probably have spent, 6 or 7 years actually in Risda. And so it's a tremendous commitment. And it's not something you do on the weekends, I'll tell you.
You didn't have trouble filming? They didn't have any...
No. In fact, they want the films. And one of the things we did was we turned back films taken from the early 70s. 6 or 7,000. And people came streaming in because they said, I don't have any films of my mother. She She died, 25 years ago. So we sit them there, and they go through all these, and they pick out pictures. Every picture we take, we make copies, and we give them copies. So we come back with thousands of pictures to pass out to everybody. Yes, Chris.
How is this changing their culture? And you have the internet, they're having movies.
Culture has radically changed. It's not us doing it, it's the world is getting swept up. They have television here now. They're watching an American television program. They're dubbed in Spanish. I was there when the first TV was turned on, too. It was a battery-operated Sony. Remember those little ones we used to have, run on a car battery? And I was fascinated listening to what they were saying about they called it that word that I they have the government just put 25 telephones in. And they have these phone cards that they can't afford. They can receive calls, though, so Pam and I can actually call them and say, how'd the harvest come out this year? And so on Saturday morning, sometimes we actually can talk to them. Yeah, the world's completely turned upside down here. It's just totally different. 80% of the people didn't even know a word of Spanish when I first got there in 1970. Maybe 90%. And now, only the old people are monolingual in the native language.
Young people they don't know their language?
They're monolingual in their language and not one. Yeah.
What is being done for
Well, what's being done is the work we're doing, frankly. And I don't know if you remember, but when I was giving you the word for email, there were 3 boys there. Those are college students. They opened a branch campus like IPFW. It's about 5.5 hours walk away. It's one building. And we have 6 students in this village who are actually going to college. And the first day we were there last year, they came in and they sat down there. They're very polite. They'll sit there for 3 and 4 hours saying what they want. And we know about this, so we just wait and wait and wait. And it gets dark and late. And you're tired. Eventually they say, "We know what you're doing now. You're documenting all this, aren't you?" And we said, "Yes." And they said, "We'd like to help you." And we shared everything, all the data with it. Every myth that we collected and translated, all the photographs we're sharing exactly with them. But that only came from the kids who had been exposed to the university. So it's all about. We're not there to tell them anything. We're not there to dictate. But we are there, at least recording some things that they're interested in and they care about it. And I'm glad they did, because so many places in places like Mexico consider that to be backward and old and useless, and they all want to get into the cities. And it's interesting, when we welcome these people like this into our civilization, they're welcomed in at the bottom of the barrel. And for the first time, they know poverty. There really was no poverty there. They didn't have anything, but they had food, they had each other, they had clothes, they had houses. They go to Mexico City. Go to Mexico City, and you'll see a lot of those people in those god-awful slums are Native American. That's how they get into our system. Eskimos, the same thing. There was no poverty among the Eskimos. Now they're the poorest people in Canada. That's the tragedy. And of course, poor people don't care about their own social traditions. How do they? They're trying to get rid of them. And this is a tradition that goes back, this is probably 5,000 years old in Christianity, or older even. And so, I think it's worth preserving, absolutely. So you document it. You film, you write, you interview people, you collect their myths, and you publish them, and you try to keep it out there. And very quickly, the younger guys are coming in there, and no females yet, by the way. We're not ready for that yet, apparently. Are very interested in the work we've been doing on it. They don't know their own culture. What's the arch there? I said, that's the sky. And I didn't know that. And 2 of the kids came up with us on a pilgrimage for the first time.
In fact, they took some of that footage. I took that, but then we left them the camera. We gave them the camera, and they continued taking films. So they've got that footage.
We left the camera with them. They can go ahead and they can film stuff themselves. Yes, somebody.
Okay, your question was how the infrastructure,
right,
the way that humans interact with their environment, influences the superstructure,
right,
so the ritual.
Right.
And in this case, we see the horticulture, the methods of production,
right,
influencing the type of rituals that they have.
Right.
Does the superstructure, or do these particular rituals, then have a sustaining effect on the infrastructure? Does it make it so that those methods of production that they use are easier or more accessible?
Exactly. That's exactly what happens, but we're not sure how. You've asked the question of the century. How does that work? And you got to get away from this sort of functionalism, that just functions to make them all think alike or something like that. It's doing something profound with the way that they're working. And trying to figure out how that happens is what it's all about, and it's not easy to do. Is there a connection between infrastructure and superstructure? There's no doubt about it. But it's such a complicated business.
Like it might be cyclical.
It's partly some feedback, there's no question about it, but the main causation goes from the bottom up, I'm convinced. Protestantism didn't just come from nowhere. It had to do with political and economic changes that were occurring in Europe in the 16th century. I don't think there's any question about it. Yes?
Don't you think that this bifurcation into infrastructure and superstructure would make it impossible to adequately explain a culture that's pantheistic?
No.
The distinction would be not there. When you're importing a Marxism, which already makes this distinction into a system of belief in which the distinction is absent. Is that not make critique sort of difficult?
Clarify the question, I didn't quite get it.
You've made a distinction between infrastructure and superstructure.
Right, that's not my distinction. That's very common, but go ahead.
That's a common language in this question, though.
Okay.
Anyways, it's a bifurcation of reality.
Right.
The material, sort of scientific materialism, and then what are sort of ideal.
Right. That's right.
If you're dealing with a pantheistic culture, this distinction doesn't exist.
In their culture, it doesn't exist. That's right.
So you're trying to explain their culture with a distinction that you've imported.
Yes.
Is this distinction between infrastructure and superstructure, is it a potential handicap in your exploration?
Yeah, that's actually a very good question. We are not just simply trying to reproduce their system. We're trying to explain their system. We're trying to develop scientific principles that explain their system as well as our system. And anthropologists make a distinction between what we call the emic perspective and the etic perspective. The emic perspective is the perspective from the point of view of the people. So emically, there's no distinction at all. They see themselves, the infrastructure and the superstructure is the same. Etically is the perspective of scientifically trained outside observers. Etically, we do see this. So, is it an imposition of a European way to look at things on other cultures? In that sense, it is. I'm not trying to explain their culture in terms of their own explanation. I'm trying to explain their culture in terms of the internationally agreed upon canons of scientific research. That's right. So there's a distinction, and they may not agree with the interpretation. I mean, if I would explain this to them, they may completely disagree with it. But that doesn't necessarily make it wrong. People often disagree with outside observers' perspective. That doesn't make the outside perspective wrong.
It's a different language.
Yeah, it's a different way to look at things.
I would like to present Dr. Sandstrom a plaque of our appreciation. It says College of Arts and Sciences, Distinguished Lecturer Series, presented to Alan Sandstrom, April 22nd, 2008.
Thank you very much, sir.